See, are we live? Hey y'all.
Okay, there it is. You just popped up on my feed. We live. We live, y'all.
We live. We
We are
live.
live. What up, y'all? We back. We back. We back. And I know
Season
y'all
two.
heard. Y'all heard the news about our girl this week. So y'all know we doing a special edition of Live with the K High because we have this great news about our girl.
That part.
Sorry, trying to retweet this stuff real quick so people know what's going on.
I know, right? Let me go ahead. How many folks we got up in here? Because I got a special surprise.
Wait, hold on. What you mean? Oh, scared.
We're letting y'all come in. We're giving y'all time to come in before we start. We don't want y'all to be late.
Is this a good time to plug my OnlyFans? I'm joking.
Dude, Drew, you know
OnlyFans.
these girls will lose their damn mind. But you wouldn't only have girls on there too,
Yeah,
because they
I ain't
be a little thirsty on there.
I'm just saying, like, I quit my job. You know what I'm saying? I can go ahead and, just do that. Hey. I'm just
Oh
joking.
my god.
Okay, well, Drew, why don't you kick us off?
We're going to kick it off. And we support sex workers. All right, I'm joking. All right, we're going to stop. Anyway, 3, 2, 1. Yo. Welcome back, folks. Like, we got a good amount of people in the room, and it's live with the K-Hive. K-Hive stay live with us tonight in the daytime. You know us, and we are one more than 5. We got a new face or an old face rejoining, but it's been so long, might as well be new. Goodness gracious. In any way and anyhow, we're going to go around the panel and reintroduce ourselves. Some of us need more reintroducing than others, and I know y'all want to get that welcome back hug and whatnot. I am your host, Drew Comments, chilling here with the Red Solo Cup. As usual, it's not gang related. Don't worry about it. That's the only stuff, color they had in the dollar store. Don't worry about it. If it's blue, I'll get that next week. But anyway, I got the strawberry lemonade, keeping it just a little bit of vodka in there. That's about as sophisticated as I get. And we're going to just go ahead and say hello to a new old face, all new face. Girls, good to see your face. Heather, kissed by a rose on the grave. I'm sorry. Welcome back, girl. How you doing?
Thank you. What's up, y'all? It's been forever. Look at all these faces. Y'all don't miss me, huh? Just a little bit, maybe. What's up, K-Hive? Look at what y'all did. Turn up. Look at what y'all did. It's so good to be back, and y'all know I had to come through season 2. It's gonna be live. Let's go.
Be
Heather
crazy.
Rose
Out the gate.
on all the social media. Heather Rose goes.
All right. They was getting worried for a minute. They thought we had written you off the show like Kyle and Linda Single, but nah, I said she's back. I know. I saw that end of season 4. It was crazy. I cried at the airport and walked out. In regard, let's keep it moving. Sydney, hey, how you doing, girl?
Man, y'all, K-Hive, I fucking love y'all. Y'all gave me my fucking life. Can we curse? I don't know if we can curse. I'm sorry. But K-Hive, y'all gave me my life this week. And this is to our girl. We just gonna
Bottles, okay.
to VP, honey. Yes, we are popping that thing. We are popping that thing.
We popping champagne like
I
we
got
want
some,
to champion.
we go up here, okay. This I had to go spend big money. I got on money green. Okay, I got my green on for my money and my gold for my good luck. So I'm old school and I'm black. So we turning it up like my good sis in the White House in November. Come on, Biden Harris 2020. We finna take it in a landslide, y'all. Woo! Congratulations, K-Hive. Woo, 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 woo,
I'm
woo.
impressed with the fancy flute though. Like, I'm keeping it with Red Solo Cup. She said, "No, we getting out the good stuff."
This is courtesy of Silversmith, mama, because she bougie and she from Chicago. You know how we get down in the Midwest, honey. Pinkies up.
This came in a set of 4. I paid $129.95.
Okay, Pure One imports. Okay.
They ain't mad at you. All right, moving on. Kenny, too raw, too real. What's happening with you?
What's good, y'all? Welcome back to Live with the K-Hive. We on season 2 because this is a whole different ball game this time. We are out of the primary season. It looks like everything, all the hard work finally paid off. When they were trying to mess with us, child, we kept on pushing and kept on moving. But I'm just sitting here chilling, maxing, relaxing, acting all cool, shooting something. I'm just playing. But I'm just here sipping on some rosé mixed with cranberry just because I'm telling you, this rosé is too bitter for me, so I got to mix it with something because I can't do it.
All right, that's what's up. Oh, and of course we got Maya Contreras, who was live today, and I was like, yo, let me slide on in her, see what she's talking about. Now she's live again. What's up, Maya?
I'm good, thank you. It's been a week, yeah, I was live today, just trying to keep up with Reese, again, can't do the 5 days, but just trying to get the information out when needed. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. I just did something else live. I think all of us are just full time trying to get this information out. So I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
Yeah. I created a super thread that went viral. It's got like over 20,000 likes, y'all. So please, if y'all see the super thread, please keep it moving. We're trying to get this information, circulating around social media. I'm gonna have more information out there about cybersecurity later on. We're gonna do our thing. So yeah, Maya, just as she said, we're all stepping it up, and we need as much help from you guys as we can get.
That's what's up. And of course, we got Reese, Black Women Use, UCLA, go Bruins. What's good, wish?
Hey, y'all. Cheers to Senator Kamala Harris, our next VP. We did it.
Bottles, tea up, turn up.
Before we get started, I just want to say one thing.
Howard, HU.
Ooh, in his thing.
That's what you wanted to say, Drew, but go ahead.
The illustrious HU, let's go, period.
Child, we mentioned a whole bunch of money. Y'all seen all the memorabilia they had.
Come on, HU, come on, y'all showed out.
We gonna make some money.
Y'all showed out. Damn it.
All right, I'll say this. It's a small price to pay to get Kamala in the White House. I will, I'll take that. I'll take that, on the chin for the next 12 years. That's cool. It's all right. But ANT's next. We got some folk coming up in the next 30 years, I think. That might be able to do something there. But no, first thing I wanted to say was no weapon formed against me shall prosper. I just want to put that out there because that's the theme of this. I ain't saying I can say it, but I just want to throw that out there. Listen, all things work together for the good of those that love him and are called according to his purpose. Y'all, the delay is not denial. We are here. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and move forward there. So, getting into this. Before I actually start, Reese, what the comments looking like? Anybody say anything that we need to?
Everybody's just showing everybody lots of love. Sydney, you're hilarious. Somebody said, sing it, Drew. Get it, Drew. Lots of enthusiasm. We have a nice crowd. Ready for season 2. So let's get it done. Let's tell people what we're doing tonight.
Let's get it. So check it out, y'all. So we're gonna do that a little bit different today. Today, in the spirit of verses, or this is the battle of the beeps. You feel me? We battling. It's not even a verse. It's a battle. All right. Versus is a friendly exchange. This is more smack DVD, smack URL. Like, I legitimately hate this dude. Like, you say, I see you in the parking lot. You was talking tough. You bark a lot. You don't spark enough. Like, you got to do that, I hit you with an awkward truck, rap battle, but maybe not quite like that. But y'all get the idea and the gist. You feel me? So, this is the Battle of the Veeps. We are talking about 10 good things that Kamala has done and 10 bad things that Mike Pence has done. And I want y'all to know that we're not being biased in this.
We're being biased.
Oh, yes, well, here's the thing. We're being biased, clearly. But what I'm saying is we are literally just comparing Kamala Harris, Mike Pence, and we're going to let y'all decide. We're just going to put the facts out there and let y'all feel how you want to feel, be real how you want to be real. So, I think for something that's so confrontational, should have never let him out on probation, yo. We're going to let Kenny start it off, the king of confrontation. Chef Monica, bro.
All right, so if we're just trying to compare records, because we're pivoting, we're out of the primary. So let's go ahead and talk about the real record. Since we're going to be comparing Donald Trump to VP, Mike Pence to Joe Biden's VP, Kamala Harris, it's just a dog walk at this point, okay? Because his record is abysmal. He's a monster. He is literally Satan in a Sunday hat, especially when it comes to LGBT community and their issues. Or everybody knows Mike Pence doesn't like gay people like that. But I went and did a little bit more research. I didn't know he was this awful until I started digging into it. I knew he didn't like folks, but I didn't know it was this bad. So, of course, Mike Pence, he opposes marriage equality. Kamala Harris literally fought against Proposition 8. Not only that, but while people were talking about civil unions, Kamala Harris was marrying people back in 2004 when people were still arguing that case. Kamala Harris was ahead of her time. So for those who still say that, oh, she's not a progressive prosecutor or anything like that, she was thinking way above everyone else, way before there was a court ruling in 2013. But not even that. Let's look into Mike Pence's past when it comes to, he actually opposed the hate crime bill. Kamala Harris actually set up an LGBTQ hate crimes unit as DA of San Francisco. And not even that, let's talk about a few more things that Mike Pence did. He also opposed the Unemployment Non-Discrimination Act. He pretty much, what that act basically did is it allowed certain places to deny serving LGBT based off of their religious beliefs. And those religious beliefs was also backed by a proponent that he actually, proposed and that he actually supported, called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which allowed people who use religion to avoid laws which are supposed to mandate equal treatment for those in the LGBT community. That's something that all Mike Pence actually supported. Well, when we're talking about other things, Mike Pence also told the embassy not to fly the pride flag. So there's another thing, he doesn't support actually showing any kind of support for the LGBT community. Also, he opposed the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He also, in an interview, and this is something that happened, in an interview in the New Yorker, Donald Trump basically said that, quote, Mike Pence said that he wants to hang all gay people. That's something that Donald Trump quoted in the New Yorker that Mike Pence said in the office. What Kamala Harris also worked for, since he wants to say that he wants to hang people, Kamala Harris actually worked to end the gay and trans panic defense. Not only that, but when she was actually sworn into the Senate, she actually introduced a bill that was called the Gay and Trans Panic Defense back in 2018. So she wasn't just doing things while she was AG. She wound up getting into office, and she wanted to make sure that this plan was implemented federally as well. And then there was one other thing I wanted to talk about. Okay, last thing I want to talk about what Kamala Harris also did. She fought against the measures to stop same-sex couples from actually adopting children. So there was a situation where a lot of people were opposed to same-sex couples actually adopting children. Kamala Harris actually went on CNN, and she was getting drilled, by the way. They was actually really hammering her hard, saying that, it's against God to allow same-sex couples to, have children. And Kamala Harris pushed back against all of that. She's been on the front line for LGBTQ. She's actually somebody who's fought for us, and she's put it in policy. And, when it comes to this debate that's going to be happening in October, not Trump, but Pence is going to get dog walked. He's going to get drugged for the field. And I'm here for it, and I can't wait to see it.
I will say also Mike Pence's record in Indiana personally is atrocious. He is someone that led to a HIV outbreak to actually expand rapidly in Indiana because he refused doing a needle exchange there. He's weaponized religion to discriminate against groups. He is somebody that is his record is so atrocious that I think that it'll be kind of a cakewalk for Kamala. The problem is the narrative Mike Pence has been able to create. And that's going to be something that Kamala is going to have to counter quite quickly, which is that if you got to see his last exchange with Tim Kaine, he would immediately lean on religion. I get down on my knees to pray. I do this. Well, I ask for God's help. And that's what he's going to be doing this time around again. However, I'm not really worried about a prosecutor being able to lay out a plan and to discuss how either separation of church and state, or how he has damaged people through some of the beliefs that were supposed to be through separation of church and state. So, I mean, I'm thrilled. I honestly thought that he was going to get dumped for a second. I know people were worried that that Trump, was going to get rid of him and put Nikki Haley in. So, but I definitely look forward, Kenny, to seeing that debate happen between Kamala and Pence. She'll mop the floor with him, no doubt.
Yeah, it's gonna be lovely seeing him get drugged. I'm gonna have to put it as my ringtone, y'all.
Well, I know it's switching Pence out for Nikki Haley is like switching out bologna for lunch meat.
Or spam, child.
Spam. I mean, it's comparable. You can eat both of them fairly easily. All right. Next up, first of all, Kenny, thank you for that. That was a very murder mook battle session right there. These cats think they invincible until the kids slam on them like Vincent do. I never knew since I used to watch those back in the day, man. You bring back some memories. We're going next up. My girl Reese out here.
What up, y'all? So in the battle of the Veeps, we have the most pressing issue in our time, which is the coronavirus pandemic. And so the next steps that I'll go through is just comparing and contrasting the way that Mike Pence has handled coronavirus as opposed to Senator Kamala Harris and her approach. Given that she is a sitting U.S. senator, that means that she is on the front lines in terms of the Democratic congressional response. And she has been very effective in pressing the administration on several issues. And she certainly brings to the Biden-Harris ticket a lot of plans that are ready to go on day one. In particular, her racial and ethnic disparities task force is something that was incorporated into Vice President Joe Biden's Black agenda. So let's start off there. One of the things that Senator Kamala Harris has introduced is the Racial and Ethnic Disparities Task Force, which isn't just about collecting data. It is also about developing a response in terms of the resources and making sure those resources are getting to the right communities. That includes personal protective equipment, that includes ventilators, that includes testing equipment, and that includes a vaccine. I know there are vaxxers out there, anti-vaxxers out there, but one of the concerns, particularly with the Black and Latino and Native communities, is that we will be the ones that are last to get these vaccines. What we have seen, and it's documented throughout the coronavirus response, is the politicization of how resources are actually distributed throughout the country. For instance, Republican governors had higher priority in terms of getting ventilators, even as New York was afraid of having a ventilator shortage. Luckily and thankfully, New York was able to bend the curve enough so that we did not have a shortage of ventilators and we didn't have to make, life or death situations on that regard. So Senator Kamala Harris, and that's just one, and I'm going to go through a list of things that she's introduced. Maya mentioned earlier the HIV outbreak. And so in the state of Indiana, while Mike Pence was governor, there was what was determined a public health emergency. It was an HIV outbreak. And truthfully, it did start shortly before he came into office, but he was very, very slow to respond to it in terms of actually creating a needle exchange program, which was the primary, the sharing needles was actually the primary thing driving the HIV outbreak. He ignored it, and it took him until early 2015, he was still resisting establishing needle programs. And I know 2015 probably doesn't mean a lot to you, so let me go back and find out when it started. So technically, it started in 2011, okay? And he took office in 2013. So it was almost 2 years into his tenure, almost 4 years into the start of the outbreak, for him to take action. And so at the time, even Republican state legislators in March of 2015 were actually advocating for these needle exchange programs. Pence, on the other hand, was supporting a federal ban on needle exchanges, okay? And he was supporting his state's prohibition in the middle of an HIV outbreak. One of his responses to actually addressing this crisis was that he was going to go home and pray on it. And I know that he is, Kenny was talking about his record with the LGBTQ community. I know that he was very much for conversion therapy and perhaps to pray the gay away, but you cannot pray HIV away. You cannot pray the gay away. Okay. So this is a person who has very delusional and anti-science and anti-human and anti-moral responses to crisis or to just other human beings, period. Okay. So at any rate, what's also interesting and actually really awful is that even after he did finally declare a public health emergency in March 2015, he immediately undermined the effectiveness of the law because he signed another bill that stiffened the punishment for people found carrying needles. So if needles are people sharing needles are part of the problem of why we have an HIV outbreak, then why would you criminalize carrying needles? If you need to exchange needles, you have to carry needles to go get some new needles. Hello, this is kind of how this works. And so he undermined his own public health declaration. And so that's the kind of approach that he has. It's not about science, it's about his feelings. So that's complete opposite of Senator Kamala Harris with, again, the Racial and Ethnic Disparities Task Force is a data-driven task force to actually get resources to the communities that are needed, not ignoring the communities like what Mike Pence did. Now, Mike Pence actually still heads up the coronavirus task force. So we're going to get into a little bit more details about how he's botched all of that. But this is just an example of the baseline of what Mike Pence brings to the table: incompetency, cruelty, anti-science, overly zealously religious, and just a complete apathy towards the devastation that's happening in his own communities. Moving along to what Kamala Harris has proposed. We know that people are struggling to make ends meet. So she has put forth the monthly economic crisis support act, which is a recurring payment. It's retroactive to March, and it goes all the way through 3 months past the end of the pandemic, $2,000 a month, plus additional dollars a month per child up to 3 children. I believe it's $1,000 or $2,000 a month. Anyway, it's a good, decent amount of money. It's almost essentially like a universal basic income. And so what this is doing is it's saying that across the board, people need help to make ends meet, right? And so that is what she has put forth for a solution. She's partnered up with Bernie Sanders and Ed Markey. And so she's very much concerned. And just a little throwback, remember she had her LIFT Act prior to all of this happening, which was another way of addressing wage stagnation. It was the anti-poverty measure. And so these are things that she has been thinking of for a very long time. And shout out to her, one of her economic advisors. She's a Black woman. Her name is Yasmin. And so that's another thing. Kamala Harris hires women. Okay. She hires Black people and she values them. Mike Pence doesn't even want to be alone in a room with a woman. Okay. So that's a complete contrast there. But anyway, bottom line is with the Senator Kamala Harris, she is wanting to put money in people's pockets so that people comfortably make it through the end of the month. On the other hand, we've seen the Republicans resist giving people money. They had the one-time payment, but they have been completely against continuing what they say is too much money for unemployment on a weekly basis. So they let the $600 a week enhancement that was paid for in full by the federal government expire. They are refusing to restore that. Now, what Donald Trump did in the Trump-Pence administration is he signed an executive order that has $300 a week of enhanced employment. if that even is allowed to stand, okay? And what he tried to do is he tried to shift part of an additional payment onto the states. The states don't have the money because the states aren't getting them from things like the CARES Act and the Republican obstructions. And so with a Trump-Pence administration, they don't have a response that's adequate in terms of helping people who are out of work thanks to their incompetence and allowing them to get through the week, much less the month. Let's talk about the Relief Act. Let's talk about evictions. The eviction, there was a slight moratorium. Basically, it was restricted to like federal housing and certain, there were certain restrictions on how the federal moratorium is. Well, what Senator Kamala Harris proposed with her Relief Act was she wanted to ban all evictions and all foreclosures for a full year. Okay, she wanted to go after predatory landlords. She wanted to eliminate penalties and late fees, as well as negative credit reporting. And she also wanted to facilitate the modification of loan terms. What her HELP Act is, what that was doing, is she did that along with Senator Ayanna Pressley, was trying to provide legal assistance for people who are dealing with these kinds of issues in terms of evictions and things like that. Now, the Republicans, on the other hand, when it comes to evictions, they want $0. And Mike Pence is lockstep with the Republicans in providing absolutely no relief for those who we are looking at a cliff of people falling off in terms of evictions. And this is going to hit us in the middle of what the CDC is saying. If we do not all get on board with wearing masks and tackling this coronavirus pandemic, the worst fall. So you're going to have the health crisis, and then you're going to have a homelessness crisis. Throwback, Kamala Harris did propose the End Homelessness Act, $100 billion to tackle that. She did that with Congresswoman Maxine Waters. So she has solutions for everything, but we're talking about specifically in the context of coronavirus. Nothing from the Republicans, banning all evictions from Senator Kamala Harris. Then let's talk about what is being done for small businesses. I'm going to start with the Trump-Pence administration. Their PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, the one that the Democrats fought as hard as they could to try to get some protections for small businesses and particularly minority-owned businesses. Well, it turns out that the Republicans were more successful at making it such that larger businesses were the ones who were getting billions of dollars. In fact, over 90% of small Black-owned businesses and Latino-owned businesses were left out of the Paycheck Protection Program. And this is another area where the funds were actually politicized. I remember reading that in California, they were among the last to get it. I wonder why. It's a blue state, whereas you had other states that are red states that immediately and much larger proportions were approved for the Paycheck Protection Program. So that's what's happening on the Republican side, the Trump, Pence, McConnell Republicans. Contrast that with Kamala Harris's Save Our Street Act. This is another time when she partnered up with Ayanna Pressley on the congressional side, in which she proposes $150 billion in grants, not loans, but grants to micro businesses. And that's really important because that's what a majority of the minority-owned businesses are. With the Paycheck Protection Program that was in the CARES Act, you had companies that had thousands of employees that were getting small business protections. And so what her bill does is it says that we're going to give grants to the micro businesses, the bodegas, as Kamala would say, to the beauty salons, to the local business owners, and make sure that they are not shut out, as well as making sure that Black, Latino, and Native American businesses were actually, and Asian American businesses were actually on the receiving end of this funding. That was what she tried to do. Let's talk about masks. Okay, Senator Kamala Harris has helped introduce the Masks for All Act. What has been said is that if a majority of Americans, a vast majority, I won't put a number on it because I'm sure by the time I say a number, it's a different number. But let's just say if a vast majority, much more than what we're seeing in terms of mask compliance, wears a mask, then within 8 to 12 weeks, we can significantly control the spread and diminish the spread of coronavirus. Okay. Now, what was the Trump-Pence administration's response to that? Remember, Mike Pence was on the coronavirus task force. Did the coronavirus task force centralize the production of masks? Did he get Donald Trump to invoke the Defense Production Act masks so that they can produce ventilators for one, but also masks, which we needed millions of masks? No, they did nothing. Okay. As a matter of fact, as different states were trying to get this equipment and they were competing against each other, the federal government under the Trump-Pence administration was confiscating these supplies that were ordered from the individual states. So they did not centralize things, they did not make it cheaper, and they did nothing. And by their inaction, it created much bigger problems throughout the country. It wasn't a do no harm, nothing. It was actually a harmful nothing. Okay. And just on another personal note, Mike Pence actually visited the Mayo Clinic, in which their policy was that everyone should wear a mask, and he refused to wear a mask. He delivered supplies to a nursing home without wearing a mask. So that's how you see such poor leadership, such belligerence. You have to lead by example. I'm sure you guys saw the Biden-Harris kickoff announcement. You saw that they practiced social distancing. You saw that they wore masks. That's what a leader looks like. Not a person who doesn't act, and not a person who's too vain or too stupid to actually put a mask on. Hold on, I gotta plug in my computer. Moving along. Throughout this coronavirus pandemic, we've seen the Trump-Pence administration target immigrants. Okay, they've targeted legal immigration, and they've targeted, even just people so much as even entering the country. They have tried to thwart the refugee process and all of those things, shut down the borders, and not for the sake of coronavirus, but just for the sake of actually obstruction immigration. And so one of the things that the Trump-Pence administration did is they announced a rule that they would deport international students if their courses moved fully online because of the coronavirus pandemic. And so this was met with swift and loud pushback. Senator Kamala Harris was leading the charge on that as well in the Senate. And after being sued by Harvard and MIT and other institutions, the Trump-Pence administration did back down on that, but it took a lot of public pressure. Their ethics and their morals should have said, I don't even want to even penalize international students who are already disrupted by this pandemic and use it as an excuse to implement a cruel policy. Let's also talk about how Senator Kamala Harris, along with colleagues, introduced a National Defense Authorization Amendment to increase national production of testing supplies and personal protective equipment. Now, I mentioned earlier that Donald Trump refused to invoke the Defense Production Act. But let's also talk about how Donald Trump insisted that they actually slow the testing down. And he said that the reason why we have so many cases is because we have so much testing. The reality is that the United States was behind in actually testing compared to other nations. We still have shortages of testing in some places. We still do not have the testing that we need, and we still do not have the contact tracing that we need, thanks to the incompetence of Mike Pence's coronavirus task force. Senator Kamala Harris is part of introducing the Emergency Health Care Guarantee Act. One of the things that the Democrats have fought for, and Senator Kamala Harris has been on the forefront of this, is ensuring that things like coronavirus are fully covered by healthcare providers, and trying to fight so that for instance, ACA enrollment was opened back up, and making sure that people were able to maintain their health insurance. On the other hand, the Trump-Pence administration filed a briefing with the Supreme Court to actually invalidate the Affordable Care Act, completely invalidate it. So they basically wanted to rip healthcare away. Healthcare, not just your insurance, but in protections like for things such as pre-existing conditions, for things such as no lifetime caps, and all kinds of ripple impacts. Millions more people have pre-existing conditions now as a result of COVID. And so ripping away healthcare with no plan is cruel and it's pointless. Okay, but that's what they were literally trying to do. Later, Maya is going to talk about voting, but I just wanted to just point out really quickly here, and I'm sure she'll go into more detail, how Senator Kamala Harris has introduced the Vote Safe Act, while Mike Pence has said, we're not going to stand idly by while Dem states and Dem governors use the backdrop of the coronavirus to send millions of ballots across the country. That's a really actually good reason to send millions of ballots across the country. We know that the post office is under assault by the Trump-Pence administration, and they are actually right now, as we speak, stealing an election. And they're being very, very, very transparent about it. But like I said, I'm sure that that Maya will get into more detail with that. Rounding this out, a couple more things in terms of food insecurity. Senator Kamala Harris introduced the FEED Act, which is something that she partnered with Jose Andres. And what it does is it allows the federal government to pay 100% of the cost to state and localities so that they can partner with restaurants and nonprofits. Remember how restaurants, they slow down in business. So this is also, something to keep businesses afloat, stimulate the economy, to prepare nutritious meals for vulnerable populations such as seniors and underprivileged children. She also did work on trying to increase SNAP benefits, accessibility to SNAP, giving stimulus through SNAP. So that's something that she's really worked on hard in terms of the food insecurity that we have in this country. Conversely, the Trump, Pence, McConnell GOP, they're only proposing $250,000 to address food insecurity during this coronavirus in their latest negotiations with the Democrats. That's as opposed to $60 billion being proposed by the Democrats. 250,000 versus $60 billion, okay? One of the things that Senator Kamala Harris was a part of was proposing a $50 billion child care bailout. On the other hand, Mike Pence is pushing for schools to reopen with zero regard for the safety of children. And then the last two things that I will mention is that Senator Kamala Harris early in the pandemic she proposed the Pandemic Disaster Assistance Act. So basically what that would have allowed it to do is have coronavirus be considered, or a public health emergency, an pandemic to be considered part of a natural disaster like a hurricane would. And that allows FEMA to expedite resources and assistance to people. That was something that she fought for, as well as the Pandemic Preparedness and Response through Diplomacy Act. So while this president and his vice president have shied away from taking a leading role throughout the world and attacking this coronavirus pandemic, attacking the World Health Organization, retreating from the global response, ignoring what was happening in China, Senator Kamala Harris wants to change the way that we respond in terms of making sure that we have a presidential envoy overseas when something like this happens the next time. And so I didn't have a chance to get into the criminal justice things that Senator Kamala Harris has done, the immigration protection things that Senator Kamala Harris has done. But I think that I've demonstrated that it's a glaring difference in terms of the seriousness, the empathy, and the depth of the response from Senator Kamala Harris to coronavirus, as opposed to Mike Pence's cruelty, his propaganda, his sucking up to Trump, his anti-science, and the dangerous response that has, and it's actually deliberately dangerous. This is not ignorance. This is deliberately belligerently dangerous response that has resulted in over 160,000 Americans dead that did not have to die. And we do not have this virus under control. And we are heading into what is poised to be a very devastating fall. And if we had a Biden-Harris administration, we would not be having this conversation right now. We would not all be at home on a Friday night like no one else is on the other side of the world, just America. So this could not be clearer what kind of response and governance and competence we have to choose between in November on that ballot.
And I just wanted to make a quick point, Reese. A lot of people are probably looking at all these policies that Kamala Harris is putting up and like, oh, none of these policies can happen if we're, if we're filibustered in the Senate. Well, here's the thing. The FEED Act, the way Kamala Harris actually positions these policies, like the FEED Act, they're actually co-sponsored by a lot of Republicans. Tim Scott from South Carolina is on the bill. Rodney Davis from Illinois, Republican, is on this bill. So they will have those types of, she has an ability of actually explaining these policies to where Republicans are actually agree with them to actually get them more likely to get them passed. So I just wanted to say that real fast.
That's a nice little clarification. I appreciate that. Well, Reese, you went full into it. I appreciate it. So y'all ponder that. Let it marinate in your spirit. Watch too much Country Wayne. Moving on. Shout out to Country Wayne. Moving on. Let's see. We got Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Sydney. Word. She hit the vape real quick.
I know, right? I had to get ready. Because what we talking about today, y'all. We talking about maternal health and where Pence lands on some major topics, and both where Kamala stands on some major topics. I'm gonna read from some information directly from Planned Parenthood. So if you guys want to go back and find the sources, this is directly on Planned Parenthood's website. But it's basically, like 8 outrageous facts about Mike Pence's record on reproductive rights. So we're gonna go through a list of those 8. And those, to me, those were the biggest points on reproductive rights and women's health that I felt like stuck out to me. So I really like this article, and then I'm gonna pivot to a response from Kamala Harris and where she stands on her record for maternal health. And just so everyone is aware, I am pro-choice. So this is definitely something that pertains to me, and as a voter myself, and what I would want. Particularly from a candidate, I am more liberal, so I would, I'm Team Kamala on this particular instance here. Not that I would be Team Pence on pretty much anything because he's gross, but I'm always Team Kamala. I always have to put that out there. All right, y'all. So number one, Pence is obviously, been one. A one-man anti-Planned Parenthood crusade. As we discussed earlier, Mike Pence was instrumental in that particular that outbreak, that HIV outbreak in Indiana. I do remember having friends that were involved with that outbreak. They told me, firsthand stories about how bad that situation was. And what actually made the outbreak worse was Pence's war on Planned Parenthood. During that time, during the time between, I believe, 2011 and 2014, Mike Pence pretty much went on an entire crusade against Planned Parenthood, shut down a bunch of facilities in the state of Indiana. And because that is a vital healthcare clinic for folks who suffer from HIV. Folks couldn't get tested. They couldn't go. They couldn't get those life-saving HIV drugs such as PrEP because they did not have access. Anybody that is from the Midwest knows how rural Indiana is. You go through Hammond, you go through Northwest Indiana, and then the further into Central Indiana you get, the more spread out it is. It's a bunch of it's pretty flat. And there's a lot of back roads, so Indiana struggles with infrastructure. Yeah, pretty much. Mike Pence is a monster. Yeah, Kenny, pretty much. Because, you left those rural counties out of the conversation when basically, when he decided that, his religious beliefs out-trumped the healthcare and the needs of his constituents in the state. And that's just pretty much getting started there. He has been he was one of the worst governors in restricting abortion, safe abortion. So of course he is pro-birth. He's anti-abortion. And he pretty much has a grade of an F from Planned Parenthood on, protecting the right to abortion. He is pro Hyde Amendment, as much as any other, member of the GOP for the most part. That was pretty much his campaign in 2016, and that is going to be his platform in 2020. His goal is to end Planned Parenthood, and we'll go into greater detail as to why he believes that. But this guy's pretty he's pretty stunted when it comes to reproductive health overall. But yeah, this was one of the most alarming things for me. Pence tried to, during his time as governor, tried to redefine rape in a bill in order to restrict and limit access to abortion. So again, not only is Mike Pence completely anti-abortion, but he is also anti. He does not support victims of sexual assault right off the bat. And those victims who unfortunately fell pregnant to a sexual assault would be in a Pence administration would be forced to carry that child or that fetus to term and birth that child, essentially. So again, to all survivors out there, all of the women that are that have paid attention to the Me Too movement throughout the years, Mike Pence is completely opposite of where women have been going, especially survivors. We see that with his support of it's disgusting. Pretty much. And that's part of the reason why Mike Pence can't be around women. He has a very, very loose understanding of what consent means, which is why he supported Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court. We see this time and time again, that these sexual abusers, these men who commit these heinous crimes against their partners, whether that be women, or non-binary people or men, it does not matter the gender. We see that, they time and time again are being chosen to speak on behalf of everyone. We see that, they are completely that their beliefs sit at the complete opposite of where society is going. And again, we see that Mike Pence has completely been anti-growth. He is not progressive. He even mentioned at some point that working mothers stunt their child's growth. So again, we see that Mike Pence is just a relic of the past when it comes to where women stand. For working moms, Mike Pence is your enemy, essentially. He's not your friend. As a matter of fact, if it was up to Pence, he probably would regulate all mothers to a kitchen, because that's what he believes. He believes that, that women have one purpose in this world, one thing that they're supposed to do. He believes that women are born to give birth and to raise children and to rear children. And that is what we are. That is what we're supposed to do. If you have a uterus, you are supposed to birth the kids, carry them, and take care of the home. And that is what Mike Pence believes at his core. And that is what he will lead on in policy making. So let's get down to the money here. So Mike Pence signed a $3.5 million contract to lie to women seeking abortion. Again, we see that anti-abortion conversation being or those anti-abortion beliefs being seeped into again policy, and where funds are being allocated for said policy. And we see that Mike Pence is spending money that could be allocated towards public health in a charade, essentially, to keep women from making choices about their own bodies. We see that this is an investment from the GOP. This is what they care about. They care more about a charade. They care more about scare tactics. They care more about manipulation than they do actually public health. We see this showing up in, in their response to COVID. We see this, in their response to abortion and women's rights. Time and time again, we've had to fight at the Supreme Court level. We've had states, GOP run states that have waged a war against, women's rights to make decisions on their bodies, and those who have uterus. And we see time and time again that there is a complete disregard for people and how they identify, and the health needs of people who identify a specific way. We see time and time again that they have waged a war against trans people. We have seen a war against against the LGBT community. We see a war against against cisgendered women. We see a war against Black mothers. There isn't attention being paid, to those marginalized groups that, often fall victim to, predatory medical practices. So again, moving forward, Pence co-sponsored personhood legislation. So again, we see that separation of church and state, kind of those lines kind of blending again. So we see his religious beliefs kind of coming into play here, and declaring a person or declaring a fetus a person after about 6 weeks of gestation. That's absurd. A fetus is not a person, not until the time of birth. That is a scientific fact. But of course, we see that Pence is not focused on science. He is not interested in listening to experts. And his goal is to be an agitator, and ultimately wage a war against, women's rights. He is completely anti what his female constituents want, and what we, ultimately what the majority of this country wants and needs. He is acting as a relic of yesteryear, and he is completely ignoring where we are in this time in history. So moving forward, this is just another quote from Pence about how he feels about women. So again, this goes to show that, he is against the working moms. He is against the working women, professional women. And again, this proves that, his mindset is where it's at. Women belong in the kitchen. Pence made a quote that said that women shouldn't be in the military because of their sexual orientation. So again, just goes to show kind of where Pence is on that. And just to kind of round off the most ridiculous thing that I heard about Mike Pence and his record as it pertains to maternal health and reproductive health was that Mike Pence thinks that, condoms are too much. He thinks that they are too advanced. The technology is not necessary. And this is a real quote that came from Mike Pence. He said that condoms are too hard to use. People, we have lived through, the AIDS crisis of, the 1980s. Those of you who are watching who have lost, friends and family to HIV. I do remember back in the day, Left Eye wearing the condom over her eye, pushing, for the use of condoms. I remember this campaign. Again, Mike Pence is coming from a place that we haven't been in 50 years or more in this country. And again, he is just, as with just that by itself, we can tell that Mike Pence is just not who we need as VP, to progress this country moving forward. We are not going back. We are moving forward with the rest of the globe. And Mike Pence, along with the rest of the GOP, just doesn't seem to want to catch up. So in contrast, and I will keep this brief, we can just, touch base on a few things that Kamala Harris has done that makes her the complete anti-Mike Pence when it comes to, maternal health. Back in 2018, Harris introduced the Maternal Care Access and Reducing Emergencies Care Act, which specifically aims to reduce the racial disparities in maternal mortality and morbidity, according to a specific press release on her website. The bill would create 2 new grant programs. One grant would provide implicit bias training for those of you who are Black women who have experienced trauma with a specific doctor. Those of you who know of Black women who have unfortunately perished because of complications from childbirth or shortly thereafter. This is a big deal. We see time and time again stories of horrendous health outcomes for Black mothers who have just had birth. Black women are 275% more likely to die from complications of childbirth than any other group in this country. This is a crisis, people. This is a crisis. And what we see from Kamala Harris, as a contrast to Mike Pence, is not just attention to detail, but money allocated. We see that we see not just a plan, but we see the pathway to action that she has created. And she creates a very sensical, a sensical pathway that is easy to explain. It's easy to conceptualize. When we're talking about, how much it's going to cost, we see clear transparency in every, in every aspect of, of this bill that, involves, some kind of funding. And we see that she has taken this issue. She's talked to, Black mothers. She's talked to Black women who have become doulas and midwives, nurses, doctors, OB-GYNs. She's listening to experts. She's on the front line. She's getting to the people, and she's asking the correct questions about what they need and what kind of attention and what kind of money will they need to get these issues resolved for their patients. She currently has, Senator Harris currently holds a 100% rating from the Narrow Pro-Choice, from Narrow Pro-Choice America. She received support from Emily's List. Shout out to Emily's List, because I am on that list. And they are an organization dedicated to getting pro-choice women elected to office. So again, we see that she has plus ratings from different organizations dedicated to pro-choice initiatives. She has talked about repealing the Hyde Amendment. For those of you who are not aware of what the Hyde Amendment is, that is the current amendment that is in place that restricts federal funds. So if you guys are on Medicaid or Medicare, public aid, you cannot use that money that you get from that healthcare to apply it to abortion services. You can get basic birth control, but if you do need an abortion procedure, you are unable to use federal funds or federal insurance to cover that at this time because of the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment is a very, very controversial amendment that is often included in stimulus packages. It's often included in FEMA conversations. In any conversation where there is talks of like public funds being distributed or socialist programs, social services, I should say, being distributed across the board. The Hyde Amendment is often used as a weapon in the Senate. There are threats that if you remove the Hyde Amendment, we're not gonna support this bill. We're not gonna support this, these measures, and it becomes it becomes a tool that is used for leverage from both sides. And Kamala Harris has stated, time and time again, that she's dedicated to ending that nightmare for women, because oftentimes women are caught in the crossfires of those conversations, and she wants to see that draconian legislation repealed. And she has stated that she would be dedicated to that if she were to move on to a ticket, which we see that she has. So again, with Kamala Harris versus Mike Pence, it's like night and day here. Kamala Harris has also introduced legislation and we talked about this on our last episode, to address uterine fibroids. That is something that plagues Black women, right now in particular. That is a conversation that Black women are having amongst themselves. And we talked about that in greater detail. It is something that happens to all women, but Black women have been, have experienced these rates at astronomical levels. We see this resulting in, mass hysterectomies for Black women. And what Kamala Harris has done is she has created legislation to address these particular issues, along with funding. So again, when it comes to reproductive rights, I know that this is something that we probably all should know, but it is very alarming how far right Mike Pence truly is. He is a true enemy of, women's rights, reproductive rights, and a true enemy of healthcare. And the contrast is literally like night and day between the two. And Kamala Harris seems to be on the right side of history on multiple stances when it comes to not just healthcare, but women's reproductive rights as well.
Okay.
I just want to say one quick thing, and it's going to be real fast. If you're pro-choice, you should be definitely for a Biden-Harris ticket. Even if you are a pro-lifer, you should be for a Biden-Harris ticket, because when it comes to women's reproductive rights, Kamala Harris is literally introducing bills. If you say that you're pro-life, these bills are actually going to allow women to have children, especially maternal mortality. What she said about uterine fibroids. This is how children are made, right? If women are having hysterectomies, that means they're not going to be able to have children. Did you say that you care about lives of children and you're pro-life? Then you should be pro-Kamala. You should be pro-Biden. So these bills are very important. I just wanted to make sure I make this point. So if some Republicans that may be watching this, if you're on the opposite side and you say that you care about these lives, why aren't Republicans putting up policies like this?
Thank you.
Why isn't Donald Trump talking about things like this? I guess because it disproportionately hurts Black community. Maybe you don't care because you don't think Black lives matter. But if you think that children's lives matter and you're so pro-choice and you say that the infants, all these things, right? Then you should definitely be backing a Biden-Harris ticket, because I haven't heard anything like this from the Republican side.
I mean, either.
That's all I wanted to say.
Boop. All right, you said it. Okay. All right, Sid, you went in, did your dizzy. All right. Next up, Heather, how you feeling? Let's get this battle started.
Ooh, I forgot how to use my Zoom for a second, y'all. I was like trying to find the button. So I'm gonna try to keep this really short. Also, Reese hit on some of the stuff that I was going to touch on, just because Kamala did so much in coronavirus during this pandemic that, you know what I mean, some of this stuff does overlap. So when we're talking about Pence versus Kamala, I think it's pretty clear at this point that, yeah, Pence is awful. I didn't know some of these things that you guys have been touching on, and I'm just like, I knew he was bad, but I didn't realize he was that bad. And when it comes to specifically immigration, there's what a lot of people, I think, many of us remember specific moments during the last few years around immigration. And I think this is kind of going to be a bit of an unfortunate trip down memory lane that we're going to have to take here, because Trump, this entire administration, including Mike Pence has been awful in terms of our treatment of other human beings, whether they are, you know what I mean, citizens of the US or not. It doesn't really matter. They just are inhumane. And like many people say, cruelty is the point when it comes to them. So I want to start with, I'm actually going to take it back a little bit, but 2004 as senator, he basically most of what he supported as senator, he just kind of voted along party lines. So when it came to immigration, when it came to quote unquote immigration reform, a lot of the stuff that was put forth, he was just like stamp of approval. Yeah, you got it. I'm with the Republicans on this. Luckily, a lot of their stuff failed, and including this that he put forth, the bill that he put forth, which was the Undocumented Emergency Medical Assistance Amendment. And this would have required hospitals to gather and report information on possible, so people that they thought were undocumented patients before hospitals could be reimbursed for treating them. Another part of that was that if, you know what I mean, these hospitals, if the doctors felt like these patients who they believed were undocumented could be, I guess, you know what I mean, transported to their, basically deported to their country of origin and treated there, and it would be, the language says there would be a significant chance of their conditioning not worsening, then that was okay. And so what we know is that when we're talking about specifically the Republicans, and this is something with Mike Pence that he has put forth, they're very, when it comes to language, you got to pay attention to that. And so it's like, so by whose standard is, would you know what I mean, a patient's health potentially deteriorate? Like who comes up with specifically a significant chance? Like what is a significant chance? So that wasn't really clear in this. And like I said, this was a bill that 2004, it failed. Thank goodness. And even then, like this is kind of a history with him. And I think it also speaks to what has gone on during the pandemic. Because if you all remember when the pandemic first kind of hit and we were all in lockdown and people were going to the hospital for treatment. And one of the things that, you know what I mean, Trump's administration, what ICE was doing was that they were going, there were reports that they were going to the hospital and arresting people and taking them into custody, who they felt were undocumented. They were taking them into custody with the intention of deporting them. And so this was something that Kamala spoke out against. And she specifically was pushing back on this because it shouldn't be, we're in a pandemic. We shouldn't be going around hunting people based on just the fact that, you know what I mean, whether it's a belief that you think that they're undocumented or not. And I think part of that, one of the bills that she put forth was actually with Senator Hirono. And it was, let me see, it was called the Coronavirus Immigrant Families Protection Act. And this bill was basically, when I was reading through the language, it's pretty much was created so that immigrant families would have access and resources to healthcare. And that includes also, which is a key part of it, that the language, anything that was released from CDC, anything that pertains to information about the pandemic, how to protect yourself, where to go for testing, all of that would be translated into other languages. And so you can kind of see the difference here. Here is Mike Pence, who is just like, let's just send them all back to where they've come from. That's what he believed in 2004. And then, you know, now Trump's administration, oh, let's send agents into the hospitals and remove these people. And then you have Kamala Harris, who, number one, was speaking out against this, and two, created an entire bill to help educate people and keep them safe during this time. So that's something that just the two differences. Again, Mike Pence is awful. Then you have, let's see, 2007, this kind of piggybacks off of Kamala Harris has always talked about education being key. And you know what I mean? We should work to create resources like the bill that I just discussed for immigrant families so that they're not left behind, so that things are translated into multiple languages. 2007, he actually co-sponsored a bill that would declare English as the official language. And in order to become a citizen here, you would have to be fluent in English. That is what that man did. So that also failed. Very thankful for that. Let's see, 2015, as governor, he suspended relocation of Syrian refugees to Indiana because he wanted assurances from the federal government that proper security measures would be taken. So this is basically villainizing people who were fleeing just a humanitarian crisis at the end of the day. That's pretty much what it was. It was war. It was, you know, and that was his response. He didn't want them to come to Indiana. And thankfully that was, he lost in court. And even though he instructed his AG to appeal, that didn't happen. They lost. So Syrian refugees were able to come to Indiana. Let's see, there's 2017. We all remember the Muslim country ban that Trump had. So this is really interesting because as governor, Mike Pence didn't agree with this. He actually spoke out against this. And then when he became VP, all of a sudden, he felt like it was constitutional. This was Trump's right to be able to ban people from 7 countries from coming to America. And here's what he said. He said, President Trump has made it clear he is going to use his authority as president under the law to put the safety and security of the American people first, especially when it comes to protecting this country from the threat that radical Islamic terrorism poses. The executive order is on a solid constitutional and statutory foundation. Wow. Now, if you remember, Kamala was actually very outspoken about this. And so let's look at her language and you know what I mean, her response to Trump. She says, discrimination against refugees and immigrants from Muslim majority countries, most of whom are women and children, runs counter to our national security interests and will likely be used as a terrorism recruitment tool. Opening our doors to those fleeing war and oppression has been the policy of presidents of both parties for decades. So you see the difference there. Again, quite clear. Let's see, then there is the wall, that wall that Mexico is gonna build, pay for. Yeah, so Pence supported that. He actually, 2006, he was all about it. He actually had a, I guess there was a bill called the Border Protection, Anti-Terrorism and Illegal Immigration Control Act of 2005. So, and the proposed border security measure was a 700-foot wall along the Mexican border. So this is back in 2006. So when it came up again, when Trump became president, Pence was all for it. And he felt like there was nothing, this is the border security. There's nothing wrong with this. And so we all know what Kamala called it. She said this was Trump's vanity project. Y'all remember that? Said that multiple times. And guess what? Mexico didn't pay for it. Now did they? So there's that. Then there was the debacle at the border, which I think a lot of us remember. The hearings, we remember the audio of the children being separated from their family. We remember, I specifically remember the woman who testified to the House in a House hearing about her child that was born into custody dying. And that was really just a sad, awful situation. And what we remember is Pence actually was kind of put forth as the person that was going to go and inspect these detention facilities. And so 2019, he goes, he takes camera crews, he visits 2 different facilities in Texas, one of which, neither one, I believe, had children. But the first one, he said, was perfectly fine, and Americans should be proud, quote, proud of the work that border agents were doing to keep us safe and also to keep the people healthy that were being detained there. And then there was, and that one, I don't believe that there was footage, but the second one, if everyone remembers, it was when he went to the second facility and it was all of the men. And it was like hundreds of men in the facility. And what they all were chanting was, we want a toothbrush, we want a shower, we want clean clothes. And he stood there and he was just looking at them. And so it was all of these people packed into these basically cages, shouting to him, asking him for help, and he just stared at them. That's what he did. And what he later said was that the legal immigration system of this country is the most generous system that has ever been created under the Trump administration. And when he was talking about the inhumane facilities, what he did is he blamed the Democrats, because he said it was their fault that there wasn't funding, that they weren't coming to agreeing with Republicans on funding. And so this was all of their doing. This is what this man said repeatedly. He showed no regard for that. Just how do you go into a situation and you see all of these people yelling, asking you for help, and you do nothing, and all you say is, oh, it's the Democrats' fault? Like, how do you not do more? That's what Mike Pence did. And if you remember, Kamala Harris, meanwhile, she was very outspoken. She was extremely outspoken during that time. She actually went out and she protested. She actually went out, I believe it was after a debate. What was it? I think it was Miami, guys. Was it in Florida? She actually went to one of the facilities, visited children that were outside. She went, if you remember the popular meme that everyone uses, which is they're not aware of, she was waving to the children outside the facility. And one of the things that she actually did was she called for, at the time, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, after they were, there's video of this somewhere, so someone will find this and I'm sure share this, but there was video of her questioning her and basically coming for her head. And she was asking her specifically about the family separation and detainment of pregnant immigrants. And she came out after that and said that she needs to step down. She needs to resign. She wasn't doing her job. It was just awful travesty. I mean, how do you explain away all of this? And really, if you remember, Nielsen, like, she wasn't really saying anything. It was just, she just was showing no remorse whatsoever. And then last thing that I just want to add is, well, actually two things. So this year there was she demanded so prior to the pandemic, she was actually asking about what was being done in these facilities to protect the people that are being detained in them. And it was all, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you. What we found out weeks later is that many of these children that were being detained, there was no social distancing, there was no masks, they weren't even being given, baths in many cases. And so she actually came out with Representative Escobar and demanded that they would be released. Pence, Trump, nothing. There was no response to it. Nothing was done. And what ended up happening is that they started finding that many of them were getting sick as a result of this. And then the last thing is just that, if you guys recall, Trump, I wouldn't say Pence because I don't remember him doing this, but he didn't say anything. So that makes you complicit. But when the pandemic initially hit, all of the things that Trump was saying about China and the backlash that many Asian Americans got because of that. And so Kamala, if you remember, she actually came out and pushed back against that narrative. And she condemned the anti-Asian racism, because that's what it was. It was racist. The racism that was going on, and the discrimination that many Asian Americans were experiencing as a result of the language from Trump, and a complicit, because he didn't say anything, Pence. So that's all. That's pretty much everything. I don't know if you guys want to add anything. I think I hit pretty much everything.
I just wanted to add one small thing. I know y'all probably tired of me adding my little 2 cents or my 2 piece in a biscuit, but I just wanted to say, you know, with the coronavirus, there was like 700,000 people who died from COVID-19 now. And it's more than just the coronavirus, which Trump is affecting and what he's actually ruining people's lives or causing death. The border wall. Oscar Ramirez, the 25-year-old, actually wound up drowning at the border wall trying to flee from safety with his 23-month-old daughter. So these immigration laws, these border walls, they are also barriers and also things that are also getting people killed. So I want you guys to remember this. These people are monsters. We have to get them out of office by all means necessary. So I just wanted to add just that small bit.
All right, Heather, welcome back once again. Appreciate that. I'm learning stuff, man. I'm teaching. You guys teaching me a lot right now, because again, this stuff I didn't really know. I spend the majority of my time studying Kamala Harris, not necessarily looking up, every single detail of other folk, especially Mike Pence. So this is actually great for me to be just more aware. And now, moving on, it's my turn. Let's roll. I cut out some stuff because we're going, you know what I'm saying, just in the interest of time and everybody's attention span. So it's going to jump right into it. Okay, so Mike Pence, Kamala Harris. Well, let's start with Mike Pence. Mike Pence actually defended the police surge that we've seen in different cities, Oakland, Milwaukee, excuse me, in Milwaukee, especially in regards to the protests. It's actually quoted as saying that we're going to bring an end to the violence that has beset too many cities in our country. We're going to do that working with law enforcement, working with local and state officials. And that's exactly what the American people would expect. As a matter of fact, the push that they made in Milwaukee was a little bit different than what was going on in Portland, or at least you can kind of put on the surface there, where the agents have been guarding buildings and been accused of arresting protesters. What was happening in Milwaukee, what Mike Pence was saying, was that this was all about fighting crime. The actual images from Milwaukee, rubber bullets, camouflage police dressed up as soldiers going into a combat zone, let's say on a foreign ground. This is what Mike Pence vehemently supported, stood by, and promoted. So according to him, he said it expands an existing program they call Operation Legend. It really sends hundreds of federal agents to Kansas City, Missouri first after the shooting to death, or under the excuse of the shooting to death of a 4-year-old boy named Legend Taliaferro. So that's them using the force of the police or using the police as an occupying force to quell protesters or people engaged in righteous civil dissent. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, she demands a hearing on the unidentified federal agents in American cities. As a matter of fact, it was in a Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee meeting. She actually demanded a hearing on the unidentified federal agents showing up in camouflage that have been deployed to American cities by President Trump with the support of Mike Pence. Her remarks, as a matter of fact, Harris explained that leaders of many cities and states are not requesting this kind of federal presence and can handle managing their constituents on their mother freaking own. She didn't say mother freaking, but I'm emphasizing that. Harris actually stressed the seriousness and the concern of unidentified law enforcement policing civil protests. She said that, to her knowledge, not one of the mayors or governors has requested that. In fact, they have said they don't want that kind of presence, that they manage the safety and public safety of their own police departments and do not want interference from federal agents who are not identifying the agency from which they work for and are wearing camouflage, which are the uniforms of our soldiers when we send them to war. Not meaning to go to war with our people. So that's the first contrast. Mike Pence sending the troops, aka the police as troops. Kamala Harris, let's take a different approach. We're not going to move there. She also was recently, if anybody remembers, she famously grilled Chad Wolf, who's the acting Homeland Security Secretary, about knowing the effects of tear gas on pregnant women protesting. Mike Pence has not even thought of that angle. So pretty clear, easy contrast going there as well. Back in 2016, if we want to look at another contrast, this is when Mike Pence was pretty much in the same position that Kamala Harris is in now, while he was vice presidential nominee. Mike Pence criticized what he views as excessive focus on racism in law enforcement. Oh boy. He said that he and Donald both believe that there's been far too much of this talk of institutional bias or racism in law enforcement. And we ought to set aside this talk and because it's the rhetoric of division. Well, pretty clear contrast. We can jump right into Kamala Harris. As a matter of fact, I can go back to when she was Attorney General, when she created Open Justice, which was, as a matter of fact, was actually a dashboard that actually includes 3 important data sets that tell the parts of the story, the relationship between law enforcement and communities. It's law enforcement officers that are killed and assault in the line of duty, deaths in custody, including arrest-related deaths, and arrests and bookings. For each metric, as a matter of fact, the dashboard actually featured interactive web tools that people could actually go on and allows the public to explore really key criminal justice indicators over time and across jurisdictions. She also directed law enforcement agencies in the state of California to track complaints of racial profile, or complaints against officers, including complaints against alleged racial profiling as well. So, 2 different mindsets here. Mike Pence, come on, man, really? That again? Really? You gonna do that again? Come on now. You bring that up again? Come on, dog. And Kamala's like, nah, this is real. It's really happening. To the point where she actually can put something in place to actually track it. Also, we saw with Kamala Harris in the Justice and Policing just a few months ago. One of the things about that is there is a ban on no-knock warrants in the drug cases at the federal level. Also, it conditions law enforcement funding for the state and local, it's conditional rather, law enforcement funding for the state and local law enforcement agencies. So that's that, banning no-knock warrants for drug cases. That's where Kamala Harris is saying, okay, especially in light of what we've seen with Breonna Taylor. I just want to go ahead and mention her name there. Mike Pence, on the other hand, had the Indiana State Police raid. I'm trying to say that. He actually had the Indiana State Police raid a voter registration location where Black voters are primarily registered. And he did this under the claim that it was because of alleged voter fraud. So he mobilized his troops as governors, by the way, if you don't understand that. The state police is your department. Obviously, they do usually have a superintendent. I want to say superintendent, but they'll have a commissioner. But the commissioner's boss of the state police is the governor. So we have Kamala Harris, who is the top cop. Ooh, scary top cop. She said it. She's got to be true. But she sees it now as, even back then and always, of just saying, wait, let's reimagine what we're doing and really rethink the force that the men and women in blue are using. Drug cases, ban the knock raid, the no-knock raids. Mike Pence, voter registration, like voter fraud, that statistically is one of the most minor and minute actions that takes place. Send them in, guns blazing, everybody on the floor. Okay, this is the clear difference. Also, excuse me, with the Justice and Policing Act, it also prohibits federal, state, and local law enforcement from racial, religious, and discriminatory profiling, and creates a cause of action for declaratory or injunctive relief. It actually mandates law enforcement providing training on racial, religious, and discriminatory profiling. Mike Pence says, come on, man, stop it. You're wearing that out. It actually requires law enforcement to collect data on all investigatory activities and submit collected data to the Department of Justice using a standardized form. In addition to that, conditions federal funding to state and local law enforcement to adopt policies to combat racial, religious, and discriminatory profiling. Those things that Mike Pence said, talk way too much about it. We're wearing it out. It takes away the effect of it. Then when real racists come around, can't appreciate it. This is the real idea. It will also condition federal funding to state and local law enforcement to establish best practices to discourage profiling. It also requires the Attorney General to provide reports on racial, religious, and discriminatory profiling and ongoing efforts to combat profiling. So, it's a mouthful. Pretty much just hammering down the fact that Kamala Harris has a belief system a little bit antithetical to what most people with a brain, I don't say that. Let's say it this way. Most people who can actually just look with their own two eyes and say, bro, something's wrong here. Meanwhile, we go to President Trump. When he signed his executive order that creates a system of tracking the police misconduct, it bans most chokeholds, incentivizes officer training, and even incentivizes sending social workers on some nonviolent police calls. As people are really calling for reform. The president, who Mike Pence has been described as being his submissive and supportive housewife. I didn't say it. They said that in the face. I didn't say it, but I laughed when I read it. In regard, well, it's true. You'll never say nothing against him. The president's doing everything he can. He's such a good to the American people. Donald Trump really believes in it. I'll tell you what, look, I don't even want to be married to somebody like that. But in regard, this is what he said. Trump actually said that the chokeholds will be banned unless an officer's life is at risk, which means the chokeholds aren't banned because you can make that determination at any point. So it's just like, well, I thought my life was in danger. With Kamala Harris and her support, again, of the Justice and Policing Act, it just straight up bans chokeholds. That's just it. There's no, well, his life's in danger, things go wrong. No, it's just straight up. There it is. You can't use that particular force. There's enough other holes that you can use. I got a homeboy that's an Olympic wrestler. He goes against the best wrestlers and grapplers and fighters on planet Earth. He's never had to use a chokehold. You get what I'm saying? Nobody that a police officer runs into on the street is at the caliber of the people that my homeboy Jordan Burroughs goes against in the map in Iraq or Iran, Istanbul, Turkey. Like, so yes, there are ways to get out there without choking somebody to death. Also, Kamala Harris supported the Justice and Policing Act, limits military equipment on American streets and requires body cams. It also limits the transfer of military-grade equipment to state and local law enforcement, requires federal uniformed police officers to wear body cameras, and requires states and local law enforcement to use existing federal funds to ensure the use of police body cameras. It also requires marked federal police vehicles to have dashboard cameras. Mike Pence, on the other hand, is more about, he calls himself, I want to make sure I frame this correctly. He calls himself supporting the police. He also has recently, 2-3 days ago, called Joe Biden out saying that he wants to defund the police and take things away. On record, by the way, Biden's never said that. He also said that that his idea is to expand and give the police more resources, not to demilitarize or take away certain capabilities as far as military grade weapons from or particular individual or particular departments. Yes, he thinks that police should wear body cams, but not to the limit of that, not to the extent or degree of what Kamala Harris is asking for. But the main thing, and this is what sets Kamala Harris apart from everything else. We'll get to that in a second. We'll start with Pence here. Mike Pence and the death penalty. This is probably the starkest contrast between the two, other than their race and gender, which you clearly see in any regard. Pence says he supports the death penalty. He believes justice demands it's in our most heinous, or he demands it in our most heinous cases. He believes it's an extension of his passion for states' rights in the typical Republican style. He says that Indiana's protection of the death penalty, while this is why he was a governor, but he believed rather that Indiana's protection of the death penalty is supported by the part of the American experience that allows states to craft their own policies and be laboratories of innovation, independent of the federal government. He believes strongly in the death penalty. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, under no circumstances whatsoever, supports the death penalty. She's anti-death penalty to the point that she even refused to seek the death penalty, famously for a young man named David Hill after he murdered Officer Espinosa. So these are the stark contrasts we have between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. They're not going to agree on pretty much anything other than whatever day of the week that they're actually debating. So I forget the actual date. What anybody remember that date? If it's on a Wednesday, they'll agree that the day is Wednesday. That's where it'll stop right there. But maybe Tuesday. I can't remember. We'll look that up later. But that is the extent of their, or at least a taste of the extent of their disagreement when it comes, at least to criminal justice. And I'm gonna kick it off to the homie Maya.
So this is where I get confused, though, in response to what you're saying, is that so he's
Weird,
against
right?
he's against abortion, but he's for the death penalty. Like that's where I get confused. Like, how do
It's those
you?
evangelicals, you know how they are, Christians.
I know that's why I get. That's where it just like their beliefs and it doesn't make sense to me, because it's just like, how are you against abortion, but then you're, because you value lives, but then all of a sudden you're okay with death penalty. Anyway, that's just my thought.
Because Black people are, they're more likely to get charged with the death penalty. Anything that disproportionately hurts the Black community, that they're either silent about or they're for. But when it comes to everything that might affect the white community, they're open and up in arms about rights and stuff. It's just the weirdest stuff in the world. Whatever. That's another topic.
Hope it comes up, though. I hope that part comes up at a future debate at some point.
Oh, it definitely will. It definitely will. She's not gonna let that go. I will say this, though. I think that he said it's in the most heinous acts. But again, if you really value life, no matter how heinous an act is, you should maybe, probably consider that, taking another life is probably not gonna solve anything. I've had to evolve on the death penalty. I've never been to a Mike Pence level, but this is, we talking about Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. Kamala Harris, absolutely not running for Attorney General still, and you are against the death penalty. People say, yes, probably not a good idea. Sit this one out. She was like, no, I'm gonna do it and run anyway. Okay, good luck. But yeah. So with that, I'm gonna kick it to Maya. Bring us on home, girl. Bring us on home, girl.
Oh, everybody. We talked a lot tonight. I'm going to try to be succinct. I'm going to be talking about voting, and I'm going to get very specific. Okay. First, thanks for watching again. I'm so excited for Kamala Harris. My husband has been asking what's wrong with me, and I said it's because I'm in a good mood. He hasn't seen it in a long time. It's hard for him to deal with this much joy. So just want to say that. Okay. I want to talk really quickly about language. I'm glad that Heather spoke about language. all of us spoke about language, but I want to get very specific about language for a moment, because language is the tool that is going to be used for voter suppression. It's also what we use to do voter empowerment. Okay, and I want us to be very deliberate in the words that we use. Why? Because Trump, Mike Pence, and the Republicans are very clear and very deliberate in the language that they use. Okay, and let me be specific. Tonight we talked about abortion, we talked about access. I want us to be, when we are talking about these issues, we need to be specific in how we use the words. The Republicans are not pro-life, they are anti-choice. Democrats are not pro-choice, they are pro-access. That means you need to have access to being able to do what you want with your own body. Okay, so we must be deliberate. Disabled people are not differently abled, they're disabled. There is nothing wrong with being disabled. The reason why the word disabled is used is because it's in the ADA. It protects the disability community. We must be deliberate in the language that we use. When the Republicans use the words further, when the media repeats those words, that is on purpose. And we need to call them out for it, okay? Because it is racist and is a tool to suppress the vote, okay? So as I'm getting into voting, this all has to do with voting, okay? The reason why Trump is throwing everything at Biden and Kamala Harris right now is because he is slated to lose, and the worst landslide we've seen probably in a century, okay? He's scared to death because he'll probably go to jail afterwards. That's the truth. And if you think you're about to go to jail, what are you going to do? You're going to do everything you can to make sure that people cannot vote, okay? So I want people to know that. I want people to feel hope about that. He's scared to death that Kamala Harris and Biden raised $48 million in 48 hours. That's because Senator Harris energized the base in such a quick way that is terrifying to them. Okay, so I want to talk first about disinformation. Right now, what they are doing by pushing this racist conspiracy theory, and it is that, a racist conspiracy theory, what they're hoping to do is to delegitimize her. They tried to do it to Obama. What happened last time was the media participated in that. The media is starting to kind of get it. We need to keep pushing them. I saw this week that people like AP got it. I was shocked, but we need to keep pushing back, okay? 2, disinformation also comes in the form of the ADOS group, okay? This is, some people are real. I don't want to say they're not. There are some people that are real and they're part of that. And some of it is very much a Russian conspiracy because they know that our country has massive complications in how we deal with race in this country and how we deal with social issues, okay? Why do I talk about disinformation when I'm talking about voting? Because that is part of voter suppression. We must be clear in that. We must be hearing the words that they are saying. Lindsey Graham to Mitch McConnell to Donald Trump, they're not ignorant. They're intelligent, and they are using what they have studied and conservative think tanks have studied to Southern strategy their entire thing. That is what they're doing. So please know that, okay? They're being deliberate. Don't go, oh, they're ignorant. They're not ignorant. They're smart. They know what they're doing, okay? So first of all, we have to call out that disinformation. One, Drew just brought up voter fraud. 38 cases in 20 years out of 1 billion votes cast. Justin Levitt is a professor, he studied it. It's a rare thing. The Heritage Foundation came up with all these hundreds of 385 pages of voter fraud. Yeah, it's mostly been debunked completely by the Brennan Law Center. It's not a thing. Don't say voter fraud. Don't repeat voter fraud. It isn't a thing, okay? When AG Barr says that a lot of ballots are going to come to this country, how How? Can you explain to me? Because first of all, Putin's going to have to put all the ballots in a box, ship them to somebody in America. Somebody in America is going to have to pull them out, get the voting. It's not going to happen. Okay, Trump is trying to distract you. That's a distraction. So forget that. But Russia is planning on interfering in this. We are up against it. AG Barr is going to be the most threatening part. He is Trump's personal lawyer. He is not our attorney. He is Trump's. He is going to try to make sure that we stop counting. If Trump is ahead on election night, not happening. If he's ahead on election night, he's going to try to stop vote counts right then and there. Trust me. Okay. He's already said it. He said it in the New York Times. He said it in front of Congress. Okay. So that's not conspiracy. That's not conjecture. He said it. Okay. Now the post office, really quickly. I'm trying to hit on these really quickly. The post office. The post office was in trouble before Trump did this. The Wall Street Journal just wrote an article about it. They're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to say, well, the post office was in problems. It had troubles. Well, it doesn't. Trump could have easily fixed it. He just used the opportunity of the post office having issues to put his friend in there, a high donor, just like AG Barr was a high donor. DeJoy is also a high donor of money, to go in there and strip its parts out, literally. Okay. And Trump admitted it today. He said, if people can vote, they'll vote by mail. I don't care. I'm glad that the post office is falling apart. So just know that he is doing that on purpose. Okay. So we know the post office is in trouble. We know that Democrats in Congress are working on a solution right now. Okay. We're still going to have the traditional forms of voter suppression. We still have racial gerrymandering. We're still going to have less polls open. COVID's going to make it tough. So we have all of these obstacles. So here are some solutions. Yay, solutions. Okay. First of all, I'll say this. Reese got a crap ton of followers. Drew, you just got a bunch of new followers. I need y'all to use your fancy followers. I need you guys to ask them to make videos with captions from their own city and state. When they get their ballots, they should talk about how to fill it out. A lot of people, the reason why ballots get rejected is people don't know how to fill out their ballots. They don't remember to sign it. They put an X instead of a bubble. We need videos like that with captions, and we need them in multiple languages. That's one. The next thing to know is the reason why a lot of ballots do get rejected is because they usually get mailed late. That's one of the number one reasons why ballots are rejected. This election, we cannot vote at the last minute. I wish that LeBron James was my best friend, because I would say, LeBron, you with all your power, can you please tell everyone that they have to vote early, like the day early voting starts? Now, LeBron did do something amazing. Drew, I don't know if did you hear about this? Did you hear about Dodger Stadium? He got Dodger Stadium to be a place where people will be able to vote and hopefully run the bases afterwards. Now, they're going to be able to vote there. And I'm hoping other places. So LeBron, you're amazing. I love you. Okay. So I wish I had some baby powder. I'll throw it in there. Okay. Next, what I need people to know is that we only have 3 ways to vote. Okay. We have in-person voting, we have vote by mail, and we have absentee balloting. Okay. All of which we can do in the majority of states early. There's only a few states that you cannot vote early in, and I have this on Twitter. If you go to my Twitter page, you can see which states. It's like 5 states. I want people to know this because there's a lot of disinformation around what's the difference. The reason why Trump hates vote by mail is because vote by mail traditionally means if you're a registered voter, you automatically get a ballot sent to you. Amazing. When you have an absentee ballot, you have to download a form. You have to give an excuse or no excuse why, but you have to apply for the ballot. That gets sent back. Then you get your ballot. Then you fill out your ballot. Then you go back in. That is why he's for absentee balloting, because he knows that a lot of people may not have time to do those 2 steps. Okay. But we're going to have to be diligent about that this year. We have to help, our abuelas, our grandmas, our nonis, whatever. We have to help them make sure that they get their ballots. Okay. So those are the 3. Then the other one is if we vote, he loses. Exactly. Absolutely. That is very true, Kenny. So there's also some other good news, and now we'll end with this. You can vote early in a lot of states. Right now, early voting starts in 35 days. Okay, that's exciting. Early voting starts September 18th in Minnesota, South Dakota, Virginia, Vermont on the 20th. You can go to my page right now on Twitter, and you can see all the states. I put it in order of the earliest to the latest for early voting. I wrote an article for Day Magazine, and in that article, you can find out where your polling location is. You can find out who's in charge of your local election. That will be the office where you pick up and drop off your ballot. You don't even need to use the post office, really. There'll be some states that you might have to, but the majority of them you won't. You can bypass the post office altogether. I have been yelling this on Twitter for, I don't know, at least 10 days now. And now I'm starting to see like big pundits who follow me going, did you know that you can just bypass the post office? I'm like, give me some credit. It's fine. I just want us to win, so it'll be fine. Okay. So there's another thing too. You can track your ballot in 30 states. So you can find out if your ballot actually made it to its location. And in some states, you can find out if it's been rejected or accepted. And if you vote early and it's rejected, guess what? You can find out why it was rejected. The signature didn't match. You overvoted, like you voted for Trump and Biden. I don't know why that would happen, but in case a dot accidentally happens, right? You can go fix it. You can go cure your ballot in time. If you have kids and your kid spills apple juice on your ballot, you can get another one. It's okay, all right? If you vote early, okay? So I want you all to know, take a deep breath and know that there is a perfect storm of great solutions that can happen. The problem is this: a lot of people need to have access to this information. I did a voter talk about an hour before this. They did not know half of what I just told them because it's built, that's how it's designed. They don't want us to have the information, okay? So I need all of you all to share this information as much as possible. I know voting isn't sexy. I tell my husband, I'm like, how do I make it sexy, you know? I have a photo of myself that's very revealing. Do I put that up? I'm not going to do that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, what do I do to make voting attractive? To me, I'm almost like, it's so sexy that Trump can be out of office and then we'll have our first Black vice president. To me, that seems very sexy. I'm trying to make voting exciting for people. So I just want you all to know, if you have any questions, you can reach me, Maya T. Contreras on Twitter. And that's all I've got for you. I hope that was informative. Thank
Maya,
you.
just twerk to the polls. Just twerk to the polls.
I am bad at that. I can step. Y'all know that I can step. You don't know this. I can do that. I do do that.
But
okay?
stepping isn't sexy.
I think it's very sexy. I think it's badass. What are you talking about? It's amazing.
I know it's badass, but it's not like, you know, stepping is a little, aggressive.
I know. I love that.
Sir, ask how Kamala Harris feels about that as an AKA, okay?
I didn't say it wasn't boss. I said it wasn't sexy. Well, AKAs can make it sexy. I see AKAs and deltas. They make it. You know, they be doing a little. They're sexy.
No, it's funny because I'm in Chicago and stepping is a completely different dance. We have an actual dance. It's y'all.
That's what I was thinking, Sydney. I was
like, come on, stepping. I'm like, stop stepping, bopping.
I was thinking Greek stepping. Yeah, I was thinking like, okay,
I forgot about that. That's why I had to let me go ahead and clear this up.
Step, honey. They come out in all gear.
Drew, I need you to re-release that section in your video when you were talking about Kamala Harris and what the inauguration would be like. I think you need to re-release that. I think that's one of your greatest hits because, yes, it's time.
If we had, a non-COVID world. I told Roland the other day, I was like, I'm not gonna get it. And I'm not getting my step show. I'm not getting my $12 fish plate. I thought it was $8, but I found out the prices went up. Inflation's being everybody like $8. That's $12 now. What you talking about, brother?
I almost went to get a hotel for inauguration. My husband and I were talking about it because we like to stay right across. We like to stay across the street from the. What is it? Where do we stay across the street when we're in DC? The National Portrait Gallery. I like to go there. I like to stay across the street from there. I like the Hotel Monaco. And I was like, oh, I don't know.
I'm gonna be in DC. I was thinking like we should all just go and just be in the hotel, even if we can't do any festivities. We should just be together.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because if
I'm down for a trip.
Who are you talking to?
Listen,
We're definitely doing festivities.
if Senator Kamala Harris is watching, bro, you know what I'm saying? You want to hook somebody up, you know what I'm saying?
I have a question.
You know what I mean?
We all just gonna stay with Reese.
Okay.
Look at that.
Reese's like, click.
I don't know about all that.
She's locking the door.
Social distancing.
Like y'all got that Rona. Y'all ain't coming to my house with that Rona.
Reese, just put tents. You can put a tent in the backyard for us. You can just put a tent.
I do have land. I do have land for a tent. That is something I can-
I love it.
I did have a question for you. Even though we got like way off topic, but I was gonna ask because I saw the news that I think the union, the Postal Service union, had endorsed Biden and Harris.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering what you thought about that and what
Me?
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. And I mean, unions get a bad rap among Republicans because it's a way to make sure that you are having collective bargaining rights and that you're able to, get health insurance and money. And I think it's fantastic. But obviously, I think that that'll be a way that Trump can try to weaponize it and say, oh, they're going to be in the pocket for Biden. Who cares? We have to just know that that's what he's going to do. He is just trying to appeal to his base. So any of those things are great. If we're going to have, no one should look at that as bad. The more unions that go for Biden will be great. And also if I think the unions are going to organize. I think for the post office, they're going to organize. One of the things I think that Trump made a mistake. I feel like I'm on SportsCenter around the horn right now. One of the things that I think he made a mistake is doing this so quickly. Like, to me, he should have done this in 35 days. Crush the post office then. We'd all be scrambling. We wouldn't know. He just did it so early that there are going to be senior citizens that aren't getting their money. They're not going to be getting their medication. They're not going to be doing all this stuff. And these are Republican districts. I know that Trump will try to target specific post office and heavily Democratic areas. I mean, that to me, he's telegraphing that play. However, there's still Republicans that live in those districts that are going to be upset and they're going to talk to their local representative about it. You can see that some Republicans are starting to crack on this a little bit because this could affect their elections too. Trump isn't really caring about being so strategic. He's getting a sledgehammer and just smashing and just seeing what works with that. But he is forgetting one of the things that is the difference between now and before COVID is because we're still mostly at home, because we're seeing spikes in different cities and states, we're paying more attention. I mean, all of us are already very politically engaged. I'm talking about people that aren't ordinarily politically engaged. And the Black Lives Matter movements and the protests and what's going on in Portland, people are, I think they're more engaged right now about this election. This is so much chaos that for people that are Democrats and independents, I can't speak for Republicans, they're tired of this chaos. They're tired of it. So I think that anything that's going to get people to move into lockstep with Biden and Harris that are going to say, we're supporting them, we're doing an op-ed for them, we have to, because I think that we're seeing real trouble. And I will end with this. One of the reasons I'm also saying you should vote early, I'm not a hyperbolic person, okay? I'm basically pretty logical, I feel, but one of the things that is going, and I didn't mention this because I'm not trying to scare people yet, but Trump is hiring 50,000 poll watchers, different from poll workers, poll watchers. I mean, this goes back to the Black codes. This goes back to Reconstruction. He's trying to intimidate BIPOC communities. Okay? So this is why we have to vote. We have to vote early. Why we have to get our ballot in, because I mean, and I think that Rachel Maddow tried to make the connection last night without saying it. She was talking about the situation in Belarus, and she was talking about how people were getting thrown into these cells and isolating them, is because Trump, to all of us, we know this, he was testing out violence tactics in Portland. It was a staging ground to see. And I wouldn't put it past him, but I'm saying let's not get there. Let's vote early. Let's get it done. Then he won't. What else would he have left? He'd have to burn down all the post offices. I should not give him ideas. But do you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, I take that back. But do you know what I'm saying? So I think that, I want to say one last thing reassuring to everybody. When we fill out our ballots, we're not sending it to one place. We don't have a centralized voting system. That's fantastic. If we did, we'd be screwed, because Putin and Trump would just flip the switches and it would be over. We're sending them to our counties. They're counting them there. Those people know us. They know our votes. Okay? So there's just hundreds of thousands. There's thousands of counties across America that are going to be doing this. So don't be scared. Just take action is what I would say. Oh, that's what Kamala Harris said today. Okay, I'm mimicking her. I'm done.
In person, mail-in, and absentee ballots. 3 different ways we can vote. 3 ways we can get mobilized. Anyway, so either you go to the polls, bring the polls to you. If you got to twerk, step to the polls, bring your WAP to the poll. Listen, WAP stands for We at the Polls. All right, that's what that stands for. All right, we're going to get this out. I'm having too much fun with that acronym. Oh my God. All right, listen, thank you guys again. It's another episode of Live with the K-Hive. Listen, the next 8-some days is going to be thorough. We got to stay on it. Get on your family members, high school friends, colleagues, co-workers, folk in unemployment off, well, that's close. But just wherever you at, just talk to folk and let them know it's serious. Ain't no game. I'm your host, Drew Comments. Another wonderful episode with the wonderful and great Maya Contreras, the awesome Sydney A, that dude Kenny, the Empress Reese, and the prodigal daughter Heather. And we're gonna go check out, as Mobb Deep said, Mob to the exit. We out. Peace.